Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The days after that awkward blind date felt like a whirlwind for Emily. Despite the initial embarrassment, she found herself thinking about the man she had mistakenly sat with. His name wasn't Kevin, but she couldn't shake the impression he had left on her. Julian Blackwood. The name lingered in her mind. He wasn't just any man. He was a powerful CEO, someone who had the world at his fingertips. Yet, there was something about his warmth, his calm demeanor that made Emily feel like she had just met someone ordinary, someone real. She tried to push the thoughts away, but every time she went to bed, her mind would wander back to that evening. After all, a blind date was a blind date. What was she really expecting? Yet there was still something lingering in the air between them. The way he smiled, the way he listened. For a moment, it almost felt like he had shared something with her, something honest, something real. And she couldn't help but wonder if it was all just a mistake, or if fate had something else in store. She couldn't help but laugh at herself. She was reading too much into it. She was just a waitress, struggling to make ends meet, and he was, well, a millionaire. The gap between their worlds felt too wide, too distant for anything real to happen. But then, a few days later, she received an unexpected text. "Hi Emily, it's Julian. I hope you're doing well. I know this might sound strange, but I was wondering if you'd like to meet again. No blind date this time, just coffee." Emily stared at the message for a moment, her fingers hovering over her phone. Was this real? Was he serious? She hadn't expected to hear from him again. After all, she had practically run out of the restaurant that night. She thought he would have just forgotten about her. But there it was. An invitation to meet again. A part of her felt hesitant. She was used to being the one left behind, the one who didn't belong. But then another part of her, the part that wanted to believe in something more, pushed her to reply. She typed quickly, her fingers trembling just slightly. "Sure. Coffee sounds nice. When and where?" The meeting was set for the following Saturday at a small cafe in the city. When Emily arrived, she was early, as usual. The cafe had a warm, inviting atmosphere, with soft jazz music playing in the background. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. She waited by the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. As the minutes ticked by, she found herself growing nervous. What was she doing here? What was she expecting from this meeting? She wasn't the type to meet wealthy men for coffee. She wasn't the type to meet anyone for coffee, really. Her life was about long shifts, trying to make rent, and her dream of one day opening a small art studio that she could never afford. But here she was, sitting in a cafe, waiting for a millionaire. And part of her was excited, even if she didn't fully understand why. Julian walked in, and the moment she saw him, her heart skipped a beat. He was wearing a casual jacket and jeans, looking much more approachable than the man she had met in the restaurant. He smiled when he saw her, a little more relaxed than their first encounter. "Hey, Emily," he greeted her, his voice warm. "I hope you don't mind me picking this place. It's one of my favorites." Emily stood up and smiled nervously. "It's perfect," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. They both sat down, and for a moment, the awkwardness from their first meeting seemed to melt away. The conversation was easy this time, much easier than she had expected. They talked about their lives. Emily told him about her work as a waitress, about the struggles she faced every day, while Julian opened up about the pressure of running a business and the challenges that came with being in the public eye. Emily found herself laughing more than she expected, and Julian seemed genuinely interested in everything she said. He asked her about her art, about her dreams, and listened intently, as if he really cared. And Emily found herself doing something she hadn't done in a long time, believing that maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than just scraping by. As the conversation flowed, Julian's phone buzzed, and he glanced down at it briefly before setting it aside. He looked back at Emily and smiled. "I'm sorry about that. Work never really stops, does it?" Emily nodded, understanding all too well. "I get that," she said. "But sometimes I think it's good to just take a break, A moment to just be." Julian paused, his gaze softening. "You're right," he said quietly. I think I need to learn how to do that more often." For a moment, the air between them seemed to shift. Emily realized that Julian wasn't just a businessman. He wasn't just a millionaire. He was a person, someone who had struggles of his own, someone who might need a break just as much as she did. And she found herself wanting to help him, to be there for him, in a way she had never felt before. She didn't know what it meant or where this would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone in the world. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something real. After their coffee, they said their goodbyes, and Emily walked back to her apartment, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to find out. It had been a week since Emily's last coffee with Julian, and she couldn't stop thinking about him. Their conversation had lingered in her mind, the easy way they had connected, the way he had listened to her, as if her dreams mattered. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. It felt like a rare moment of peace amidst the chaos of her life. She had always been careful not to get too attached to anyone, especially someone like Julian, someone whose world was far from hers. But the more she thought about him, the more she found herself wondering if maybe there was something more, something real. Her heart would race every time her phone buzzed, half hoping it would be him, though she tried to push those thoughts aside. She had a life to live, a job to keep, and dreams that still felt too far out of reach. But every time she saw his name pop up on her screen, a small smile tugged at her lips. Maybe this wasn't just a fleeting connection. One evening, after her shift at the diner, Emily walked home, her mind heavy with the usual worries. Rent was due in 2 days, and she still hadn't found a way to make enough to cover it. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone ringing. She pulled it out of her bag, surprised to see Julian's name on the screen. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hey, Julian," she said, her voice a little breathless. "Emily," he said warmly. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I was wondering if you'd like to grab dinner sometime this week. Just the two of us." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Dinner? She wasn't sure if she was ready for something like that. Her life felt too messy, too complicated for something like a dinner date with a millionaire. But then again, something in his voice made her want to say yes. "Sure," she replied, trying to sound casual. The dinner was set for Friday night, and Emily spent the next few days feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She didn't have anything fancy to wear, and she certainly didn't feel like she belonged in the world Julian lived in. But she knew she couldn't back out. Something in her felt drawn to him, even though it scared her. Friday arrived, and Emily found herself standing in front of her closet, staring at the few outfits she had. She settled on a simple black dress she'd worn to a wedding last year, and paired it with a pair of heels she had found at a thrift store. It wasn't much, but it was the best she had. She touched up her makeup, ran a brush through her hair, and stood in front of the mirror. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman staring back at her. She looked different, more confident somehow, even though she didn't feel it. She grabbed her purse, took a deep breath, and left the apartment. Julian had chosen a small, intimate restaurant tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The moment Emily walked through the door, she felt the contrast between her world and his. The place was elegant, with soft lighting and a quiet atmosphere. It felt like a place where every conversation was important, where every gesture was calculated. She suddenly felt self-conscious, but Julian was already waiting for her, standing up with a warm smile when she arrived. "You look beautiful," he said, and for the first time, Emily believed him. She smiled nervously. "Thank you. This place is incredible." Julian led her to their table, and as they sat down, the conversation flowed easily. They talked about everything, about the city, about their favorite books, about what they dreamed of. Julian asked Emily more about her art, about why she loved painting, and Emily couldn't help but open up. She had always kept her dreams close to her chest, afraid of judgment. But something about Julian made her feel safe. She could feel his genuine interest in her, and that made her want to share even more. The evening passed quickly, and before she knew it, they were sipping on dessert wine, both of them laughing at something Emily had said about her terrible cooking skills. Julian leaned back in his chair, his eyes soft. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you," he said. Emily blinked, unsure of how to respond. "Someone like me? Someone who's not afraid to speak her mind," he said, his voice quieter now. "Someone who knows what they want in life." Emily felt her cheeks flush, but she didn't look away. Well, I'm not perfect, she said with a smile. But I know what I want, even if it feels like a long shot. Julian's gaze softened even more. I don't think anything worth having is ever a sure thing, he said. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, right? Emily felt something shift in her chest at his words. She had spent so much of her life trying to control everything, trying to make sure everything stayed the same. But in that moment, she realized how much she wanted something more. Something real. The evening ended with Julian walking her home, and when they reached her apartment building, he stopped in front of the door. I had a great time tonight, he said, his voice sincere. Emily smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment. Me too, she said softly. He paused, then took a step closer, his expression turning more serious. I know we're just getting to know each other, but I'd like to see where this goes. I think you're incredible, Emily. For a moment, Emily didn't know what to say. She was overwhelmed by the sudden shift in their dynamic. I think I'd like that too, she finally said, her voice quiet but filled with sincerity. Julian smiled, and for the first time, Emily felt like maybe, just maybe, she was on the verge of something real. The days following their dinner felt different for Emily. She couldn't shake the memory of Julian's words. I think you're incredible, he had said. It was strange how something so simple could affect her so deeply. She had always been the type to guard her heart, to keep people at arm's length. But Julian, with his calm demeanor and genuine interest, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, it was okay to let someone in. She still couldn't believe how natural their conversations felt. In a world where she was constantly trying to keep up with the struggles of daily life, he seemed to have everything. Yet, when she looked at him, she didn't see a billionaire. She saw someone who was just as lost as she was, someone who was searching for connection in a world that often felt too cold. After their dinner, Emily found herself eagerly awaiting his next message, though she tried not to get her hopes up too high. She didn't want to fall too fast. Still, every time her phone buzzed, she couldn't help but smile when she saw his name. One afternoon, Julian reached out again. This time, it wasn't for dinner. Hey, Emily, the message began. I have something I want to show you. Are you free this weekend? Emily read the message twice, trying to figure out what it meant. Sure, she replied. What's up? He responded quickly. I'd like to take you to one of my art exhibits. It's a small collection I've been working on for a while. I think you'd like it. Emily blinked at the screen. Julian, the successful CEO, an art enthusiast? It seemed like an unexpected part of his life she hadn't even known about. She was intrigued. I'd love to, she replied, her heart racing. She hadn't expected Julian to open up this much to her. It felt like he was trusting her with a part of himself that he hadn't shared with many people. The idea of him showing her something so personal felt meaningful. Saturday afternoon arrived, and Emily was a bundle of nerves. She didn't know what to expect. She had never been to an art exhibit held by a businessman, and the idea of Julian being behind it only added to her curiosity. When she arrived at the gallery, Julian was waiting outside. He smiled when he saw her. I'm glad you came, he said, his eyes lighting up. You're in for a treat. The gallery was small but exquisite, with minimalist designs and paintings that spoke to a quiet elegance. Julian led her through the exhibit, explaining each piece in detail, sharing his passion for art and how it had been a hobby he'd cultivated over the years. Emily was amazed. She had never pictured Julian as the type to appreciate art in this way. He spoke with such genuine enthusiasm, and as he shared stories behind each painting, she felt like she was getting to know a side of him that no one else had seen. As they moved from one painting to another, Emily couldn't help but notice how different Julian seemed. He wasn't the business tycoon she had once imagined. He wasn't the cold, detached figure that everyone in the industry feared. He was someone who found peace in the strokes of a brush, someone who cared deeply about the stories each painting told. Emily found herself fascinated by his passion, by the way he spoke about art as if it were more than just something to be admired. To him, it was a form of expression, a way to feel something real in a world that often felt shallow. She had never seen him like this before, and it made her heart swell with admiration. After the exhibit, they sat in a small cafe nearby, sipping coffee and talking about everything and nothing at all. The conversation was light, but there was an underlying sense of connection. They shared their hopes, their fears, and their dreams. Julian revealed that he had always wanted to open his own art gallery, but had put the idea on hold for years due to the pressure of running his company. Sometimes, I feel like I've been living someone else's life, he confessed, looking at Emily with an honesty that made her heart ache. I've spent so many years trying to build something that everyone else would admire, but I don't think I've ever really asked myself what I want. Emily listened carefully, feeling an ache of her own. What do you want, Julian? She asked softly. Julian was quiet for a moment, lost in thought. When he spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. I think I want to find something real. Something that makes me feel alive again. Emily's heart fluttered in her chest. She wanted to reach out, to tell him that she understood. She, too, had been living for others, trying to survive rather than truly living. In that moment, she realized that maybe they were both searching for the same thing. As the evening came to a close, Julian walked Emily back to her apartment. The air was cool, and the city around them buzzed with the usual evening activity, but in that moment, it felt like it was just the two of them. When they reached her doorstep, Julian turned to her, his expression serious but gentle. I'm glad we did this, he said. I'm glad you came today. Emily smiled softly. Me too, she replied. Thanks for showing me that side of you. Julian looked at her, his gaze softening. It's just the beginning, he said quietly. And in that moment, Emily realized he wasn't just talking about the exhibit. He was talking about them. The following week was a blur for Emily. She couldn't stop thinking about Julian. Their time together at the gallery had left her with a sense of longing that she didn't know how to deal with. She had always been careful, keeping her emotions in check, but there was something about him that made her want to let go of her guard. He was different from anyone she had ever met, and it both excited and scared her. She didn't want to get ahead of herself, but she couldn't deny the connection they had formed. The way he shared his dreams with her, the way he saw her as more than just a waitress. It was like he was seeing her, truly seeing her, in a way that no one ever had before. On Thursday, as Emily was getting ready to leave work, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out of her pocket, surprised to see a message from Julian. Hey, Emily, it read. I know it's short notice, but there's a charity gala this weekend. I'd love for you to come as my guest. I promise it'll be fun. Let me know if you're free. She read the message twice, her heart skipping a beat. A gala? She had never been to anything like that, let alone as Julian Blackwood's guest. It seemed out of her league, but she couldn't bring herself to say no. She had been looking for a way to see him again, and here was the opportunity. I'd love to, she replied, almost immediately, her fingers trembling as she typed. Thank you for inviting me. The night of the gala arrived, and Emily found herself standing in front of her closet, staring at her limited options. The only dress she had that might be appropriate for such an event was a deep blue satin number she had picked up on sale months ago. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was the best she had. She slipped it on, paired it with her worn heels, and looked at herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The dress clung to her curves in a way she hadn't expected, and for the first time, she felt a little more elegant. As she applied the final touches to her makeup, she realized that the nerves she was feeling had nothing to do with her appearance. It was the thought of stepping into a world that felt so far out of her reach. She took a deep breath and left her apartment. When Emily arrived at the gala, she felt completely out of place. The venue was a sprawling mansion, beautifully lit with chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. The guests, impeccably dressed, seemed to glide effortlessly across the marble floors, their conversations flowing smoothly, their laughter ringing through the air. Emily felt like she had stepped into a different world, one she wasn't sure she belonged in. But then, through the crowd, she saw him. Julian. He was standing near the entrance, looking every bit the part of the powerful CEO he was. But when his eyes met hers, all of her nervousness seemed to fade away. He smiled at her, his face lighting up. Emily, he said, stepping forward, I'm so glad you could make it. Thank you for inviting me, Emily said, her voice softer than she intended. Julian took her hand and led her into the room, his presence so commanding that the nerves she had been feeling moments before melted away. You look incredible, he said, his voice full of admiration. Emily smiled, feeling a rush of warmth. You're just saying that, she replied, trying to downplay it. I'm not used to this kind of thing. Julian chuckled. Well, I'm glad you're here. I wanted you to experience something different, something more than what you're used to. This night is for you. Emily felt her heart flutter at his words. The night went by in a blur of laughter, polite conversation, and a lot of people who seemed to have everything figured out. Julian stayed by her side the entire time, introducing her to people and making her feel like she wasn't just an outsider looking in. She couldn't believe it was happening. She couldn't believe she was at a gala, surrounded by people who were far wealthier and more powerful than she could ever imagine. And yet, here she was, with Julian. At one point during the night, Julian stepped away to handle a work-related issue, leaving Emily to mingle with the other guests. She stood by a large window, gazing out at the city lights below. The view was breathtaking, but it wasn't the cityscape that held her attention. It was the realization that she was standing in a world she had never thought possible for herself. She didn't belong here. At least, that's what she had always thought. But now, with Julian's words echoing in her head, she wondered if maybe she did. Maybe, for the first time, she was more than just a waitress. Maybe she was worthy of something more. As the night came to a close, Julian found her again, and they walked outside together. The cool night air hit Emily's face, and she felt an unexpected sense of calm. "I'm glad you came tonight," Julian said, his voice quieter now. "It means a lot to me." Emily smiled, looking up at him. "I'm glad you invited me," she replied, her heart racing. "Thank you, Julian, for everything." He smiled at her, his gaze softening. "It's just the beginning, Emily. I think you're someone who deserves more than just a seat at the table. You deserve the whole experience." Emily felt her chest tighten at his words. For the first time, she believed it. And for the first time, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The weeks that followed felt like a whirlwind for Emily. Every day seemed to bring something new, something unexpected. She had never imagined herself in a world like this, the world Julian inhabited. It was filled with luxury, high-end events, and people who seemed to have it all figured out. But despite the glittering surroundings, Julian never made her feel out of place. He treated her like she was just as important as anyone else in the room, and that made all the difference. As they spent more time together, Emily found herself drawn to him in ways she hadn't anticipated. Julian wasn't just a successful businessman or a charming CEO. He was thoughtful, kind, and, most importantly, he made her feel like she mattered. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt so seen, so valued. One evening, as they walked through a park near Julian's penthouse, he turned to her with a soft smile. "Emily, I've been thinking," he began, his voice a little hesitant. Emily looked at him, her heart skipping a beat. "About what?" she asked, unsure of what he was going to say. Julian paused for a moment, his eyes searching hers. "About us. About how I feel about you," he said quietly. Emily's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. She had known something was changing between them, but hearing him say it aloud made her heart race. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. I feel the same," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian smiled, a warmth spreading across his face. "I'm glad," he said, his tone sincere. "I don't know what the future holds, but I want to take it one step at a time with you." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. She had never been one to take risks with her heart, but with Julian, it felt different. For the first time, she felt like she was ready to take that leap. The next few days passed in a blur of excitement and uncertainty. Julian and Emily spent more time together, getting to know each other on a deeper level. They shared intimate conversations about their pasts, their hopes for the future, and everything in between. Julian opened up about his struggles with running his company and the pressure he felt to always be perfect. Emily, in turn, told him about her own dreams, about her art and her desire to one day open her own studio. "You've got the talent, Emily," Julian said one night as they sat in his living room, surrounded by the soft glow of candlelight. "You deserve to chase those dreams." Emily smiled, touched by his words. She had never had someone believe in her like that before. It felt like she was finally starting to believe in herself too. As their relationship deepened, Emily began to see sides of Julian that no one else seemed to notice. She saw the way he would get lost in thought, the weight of the world resting on his shoulders. She saw the vulnerability he hid beneath his confident exterior, and it made her want to protect him in a way she had never felt before. He was used to being in control, but she could tell that there were parts of him that were uncertain, parts of him that needed reassurance. and Emily was more than willing to give it. She was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, they were more alike than she had thought. Both of them were searching for something real, something that would make all the struggles and sacrifices worth it. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Julian's penthouse, looking out over the city, Julian turned to Emily with a thoughtful expression. "You know, I've spent so many years focusing on my business, trying to build an empire, but I've never really taken the time to think about what I want outside of that," he said, his voice quiet. Emily listened intently, sensing the weight behind his words. "And now I'm starting to realize that what I really want is to be happy, to find someone who makes me feel like life is worth living, beyond all the success and the money." Emily's heart swelled as she looked at him. "You don't have to do it alone," she said softly. "You've got me." Julian smiled at her, his eyes softening. "I know," he said, taking her hand in his. "And that's more than enough." Emily felt a rush of warmth flood through her as she sat beside him, her hand in his. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't just a part of Julian's world. She was becoming a part of his life. And that made all the difference. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited to find out. Together, the days following their quiet moment on the balcony felt like a new chapter for Emily and Julian. They spent more time together, navigating the delicate balance between their growing feelings and their separate lives. The more Emily saw Julian, the more she realized how much he had opened up to her. He wasn't the cold, distant CEO she had imagined when they first met. He was a man with dreams, fears, and a deep longing for something real. And for the first time, she felt like he saw her, not just as someone in his world, but as someone who could stand beside him. They had both come from different worlds, but now, they were slowly finding common ground. However, the deeper their connection grew, the more Emily started to feel the pressure of their differences. She had always been an underdog, someone used to working hard just to make ends meet. Julian, on the other hand, was the CEO of a successful company with wealth, influence, and a life of luxury. Despite his down-to-earth nature, she couldn't help but wonder if their worlds were too far apart. What if she didn't belong in his world? What if the reality of their differences caught up with them eventually? These thoughts started to nag at her, especially when she saw the way people looked at them when they were together. They were an unlikely couple, and part of her feared that one day, they would realize that their connection couldn't withstand the weight of their separate lives. One evening, Emily and Julian were walking through the city after dinner when the conversation took a more serious turn. Julian looked over at her, his expression softer than usual. "Emily," he began, his voice tinged with hesitation, "I've been thinking a lot about us." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea where this was going. "I know this hasn't been easy," he continued. "I know we come from completely different places, and there are things about my life that you might never fully understand. But I want you to know that I'm here, and I want to make this work. I want to make you happy, Emily. I'm ready to put in the effort." Emily felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. She had always been afraid of opening up too much, of getting too close to someone who might not truly understand her. But Julian had always been honest with her, even when it was difficult. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, and it made her heart ache. "I'm scared, Julian," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared that I'm not enough, that our worlds are too different." Julian stopped walking and turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "You are more than enough. We don't have to be perfect, but we have to be real. And I believe in us. I believe in what we have. So don't let fear stand in the way of something that could be amazing." For a moment, Emily just stood there, looking into his eyes. She had always been afraid of opening her heart, but in that moment, she realized that if she didn't take a chance on them, she might regret it for the rest of her life. She nodded, her chest tight with emotion. "I believe in us too," she whispered. Julian smiled and pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her close. The city around them seemed to fade away as they stood there, the weight of the world lifting, if only for a moment. In that moment, they both knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As the weeks went by, Emily and Julian continued to grow closer. They faced their challenges head-on, with Emily finding new strength in herself and Julian becoming more open to sharing his fears and vulnerabilities. Their connection deepened, And though they both still had doubts from time to time, they learned to trust each other more. They made a promise to always communicate, to always fight for what they had. And while the road ahead was uncertain, they were no longer afraid of the unknown. Together, they were ready to face whatever came their way. As the months passed, Emily and Julian's relationship grew stronger. They faced their fears and doubts together, learning to trust each other more deeply with each passing day. Julian continued to support Emily's dreams, encouraging her to pursue her art, while Emily became Julian's rock, offering him the stability and understanding he had been searching for in the midst of his busy and demanding life. They found a rhythm in their relationship, one that balanced their different worlds with ease. For the first time, Emily felt like she had someone who truly cared for her, someone who didn't see her just as a waitress or an artist struggling to make it, but as someone worthy of love and respect. The deep connection they shared gave her a sense of peace she had never known before. One afternoon, as they sat together in the park, enjoying the sunshine, Julian turned to her with a serious look on his face. "Emily," he said, his voice calm but filled with an emotion she hadn't heard before. "I've been thinking a lot about us. About our future." Emily looked at him, her heart racing, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. Julian smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile. "I know we've been through a lot, but I want you to know that I'm committed to you. I'm committed to building a life together. A real life. Not just some fairy tale or fantasy, but something real that we can both grow into." Emily's heart swelled at his words, her eyes filling with emotion. She had always feared the unknown, but hearing him speak so honestly, so sincerely, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, everything was finally falling into place. "I want that too," she said, her voice trembling slightly with the weight of her feelings. "I want to build something with you, Julian. I want to see where this can go." Julian reached out, taking her hand in his. "Then let's do it. Let's take that step. Let's create a future where we both belong." As they walked hand in hand, Emily realized how far they had come. What had started as a chance encounter had turned into something deep, something lasting. Their journey together wasn't without challenges, but they had learned to face them side by side. For the first time, Emily didn't feel like she was holding back. She didn't feel like she had to protect her heart anymore. She had opened up to Julian, and in return, he had opened up to her. Their love was real. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time, Emily felt like she had everything she had ever wanted: love, trust, and a future full of possibilities. One evening, a few weeks later, Julian took Emily out to a quiet restaurant in the city. The atmosphere was intimate, with soft lighting and the sound of quiet jazz playing in the background. After dinner, Julian took her hand and looked at her with a gaze that spoke volumes. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady. "I want to make this official. I want to make sure we're both in this together for the long haul. Will you marry me, Emily?" Emily froze, her heart skipping a beat. She had never expected this moment to come so soon, but in that moment, she realized that she had never been more certain of anything in her life. She had found someone who saw her for who she truly was, someone who loved her not despite her flaws, but because of them. With a smile that could have lit up the entire room, Emily nodded, her voice filled with emotion. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Julian smiled, his eyes shining with happiness as he slipped a ring onto her finger. It wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect. It was a symbol of their love, their commitment, and the life they were about to build together. As they stood up, embracing each other, Emily knew that this was just the beginning. Their journey had only just started, but with Julian by her side, she felt ready to face whatever the future had in store. The days leading up to the wedding felt like a dream for Emily. She had never imagined that her life would change so dramatically, but here she was, engaged to Julian Blackwood, a man who had not only captured her heart, but had shown her that love was about trust, honesty, and sharing your life with someone who truly saw you. The wedding was set for a small, intimate ceremony, just the two of them and a few close friends. Julian had insisted that they keep it simple, wanting to focus on the significance of the moment rather than the extravagance of the event. As Emily looked in the mirror that morning, she couldn't believe how far she had come. From the girl who had once doubted her worth, to the woman standing here today, about to marry the man she loved. Julian was waiting for her at the altar, a smile on his face that reflected the joy he felt in this moment. When Emily walked down the aisle, their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the world around them disappeared. It was just the two of them, surrounded by love and the promise of a future together. Julian took her hand, his voice soft but steady as he spoke his vows. "Emily, I promise to always stand by your side, to support you, and to love you with all that I am. You've brought more light into my life than I could have ever imagined. You are my heart, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you." Emily's heart swelled as she looked into his eyes, knowing that this was the moment she had been waiting for. "Julian, I promise to always be there for you, to share my dreams and my fears with you, and to love you unconditionally. I never thought I could have something so real, but now I know that love is worth the risk. I choose you, now and always." As they exchanged rings, Emily felt like everything she had ever dreamed of was coming true. She was marrying the man she loved, someone who saw her for who she truly was, not for what she had or hadn't accomplished. As the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the room erupted in applause, but for Emily, the world had stopped. She was right where she was meant to be, and in that moment, everything felt perfect. The reception was small but filled with laughter, dancing, and happy tears. Emily couldn't help but look around, feeling a sense of belonging she had never felt before. She had once believed that love was out of reach for someone like her, but now she knew that love was about finding the right person, the person who would lift you up and make you feel like you were enough. And she had found that person in Julian. As the night drew to a close, Julian took her hand and led her outside to the quiet garden where they had first shared a private moment. The stars above sparkled brightly, and the gentle breeze made the air feel like it was filled with possibilities. Julian turned to Emily, his expression filled with affection. "This is just the beginning, you know," he said softly. "I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." Emily smiled, her heart full. "Neither can I," she whispered, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. And with that, they shared a kiss under the stars, the start of a new chapter in their lives, knowing that no matter where life took them, they had found something truly real in each other. It was the beginning of forever.